that you have to get your hands dirty. You can't do a startup with a corporate mindset.
When people tell me that I can't do something, I will do whatever it takes to prove them wrong.
लाइफ में ना दो तरह से कॉम्पनसेट होते हो आप. वन इज योर अर्निंग एंड वन इज योर लर्निंग.
Fundamental each has always been khud karo.
I'm your host, Akshay Datt, and you're listening to Spotlight, a podcast in which I speak to disruptive startup founders.
Hi, I'm Niraj Ranjan Rout, and I'm the founder and CEO of Hiver.
It is estimated that we send and receive more than 300 billion emails per day. That's a mind-boggling 40 emails per person alive today. Undoubtedly, email is the most powerful application of the 21st century. Given that email is such a core way to communicate and work, it is fairly surprising that the core email platform is pretty much unchanged for decades. Looking at these limitations of email and realizing the potential value that can be unlocked by adding more features to email is what inspired Niraj Ranjan Rout to start Hiver. Hiver is a platform built on top of email for business to make use of email to get more things done and make their team more productive. Listen to this fascinating conversation of Niraj with Akshay Datt about building a global SaaS product from India.
So, Niraj, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
Absolutely. So I grew up in, in parts in Jharkhand and in West Bengal. I've lived in both parts of the country, and but yeah, primarily in Jharkhand, and then my family and my parents are, from that part of the country. So,
What kind of family? Like, was it like a service class or business or like?
Okay, so my family is primarily service class, but my father had a small, fairly small business, right, which was basically a shop, selling auto parts, etc. Right. So a typical small town middle class family is where I come from, right. And I grew up there, and studied in a school in that town, and that is where I was till my 10th grade, and then I moved to Calcutta to do my +2, and then I ended up at IIT Kharagpur, where I did my
Why Calcutta? Why the move for like better schooling?
better schooling, right? So it was a small town, and if your intention was to get into a good engineering school further on, you'd be better off going to that was the thesis, and being a fairly decent student, I ended up getting admitted in a good college in Kolkata for my +2, right? And so I ended up moving there. And then that
You were
was
like staying alone, like in a hostel, or you
I,
had
I was
family
in a
there?
hostel. I was in a hostel, right?
That's it. So how was that like? That's a pretty young age to like leave your
Yeah,
family
so
and.
absolutely. So but before that, one interesting anecdote that you'll find interesting, right? So I'm from a fairly small town in Jharkhand, and absolutely no one knew about that town till very recently, when Netflix did a series on that town, around that town, right?
That's
So,
okay.
if you have heard of this series called Jamtara about cybercrime on Netflix, I'm actually from that town, that specific town.
That's okay.
So,
Is it accurate? Like, is that really like a hub?
it's actually a hub, right? There's so many stories, right?
It's okay. Okay.
But a town of hustlers, and
Yeah.
very interesting, right? I mean, I would also always have to refer to other places, larger towns around it, when I told people where I'm from, but I no longer have to do that. I don't know whether I'm sad or happy about that, but
It's okay. Like people who are like into hacking and all, like your old
no,
friends and all.
absolutely. No,
That's
I don't know anyone, but I think I'm one degree of separation away from such people, right? So I know people who know such people. So,
okay.
and also
Okay.
I've been out of that place for quite some time. I visit, occasionally, probably once in 18 months or so. But I have friends there, so I know what's going on. So I knew about this for much longer before this actually came out.
But you were never like keen to make a quick buck.
I don't know if that is what I'm trying to do now, but no, nothing of that sort. Yeah.
So, how was the whole experience of living alone then? 2 years school, then another
Yeah.
4 years in IIT.
Yeah, so I think the experience in Kolkata, during my plus two was a bit difficult
Hmm.
because first I'm fairly young, I was probably 15 years old, and away from home, and getting used to hostel food, which was not very nice, and also being under constant pressure of being having to do well in studies so that you can land up in a good college, right? I mean, that is how middle class story is, and so you're in a fairly difficult environment, struggling with basic necessities like having good nutritious food and with pressure to manage to get into a good school, right? So I think all that combined to make those 2 years a bit difficult. But after we got into IIT, I think it got a lot better, right? I mean, you'd still struggle with the hostel situation, but that insecurity or uncertainty about your career goes away, and then you have peers who are very very interesting, and of you are basically with birds of the same feather, which makes your life so much more fun and interesting, right? So that is how I would put it, right? It really bothered for my plus 12, but after I got into IIT, it became really fun and really interesting.
Were you a hustler in IIT
No, I
or
was
like
no, I
regular
was
straight?
absolutely
That's a,
not.
uh,
So I was not a regular straight hardworking student either. I mean, I did decently well, but I was not one of the really studious kind. But nor I was a hustler, right? I think I spent a lot of time learning stuff, reading stuff, and doing stuff outside of the purview of what was a part of my course. But again, not very deeply involved with college politics and hostel life, etc., etc. So I was kind of midway between those two.
okay. And the job at Mentor Graphics, that was like a campus placement?
So actually, that was before my campus placement. That is where I did my, pre-placement, not pre-placement, but my
Yeah,
sub,
internship.
my internship, which was a 2 month internship, right? And I ended up, getting an offer there. So I've never attended an interview. So, that was my first
Acha.
job, and
Yeah,
that is something
yeah.
that I like to mention that, incidentally, I never attended a job interview.
Acha. Chalo, hopefully, I'll give you some experience of an interview today.
So this stuff I do quite well. So I pitched, I've been overcompensated on that front by having to pitch to so many
Ah,
VCs and
okay.
investors. Right?
Right.
So nature
Okay.
has had its revenge.
Okay. So, what were you doing at Mentor?
So I was, so basically Mentor is a company that makes tools or products that helps people who design chips build chips, right? So it's basically like, computer-aided design chips for tools for people who build chips, right? And I was in their emulation division, which is basically software that helps you confirm that your designs meet standards and do what they're expected to do, right? So essentially what it entails is you are building compilers which translate one kind of description to another kind of description and make sure that everything matches, right? So hardcore technical work. I was writing code in C++ primarily for 4 5 years, very very strongly delineated from the work that you do in web and mobile. So moving to web and mobile from there was a fairly strong big jump for me, but very interesting work technically. And Metro Graphics, the culture, the people was outstanding, right? I've taken away a lot from what I observed and experienced at Metro Graphics into how I built the current company.
So, like, what happened in like 2007 when you kind of jumped ship?
Yeah, I think I after so the first 3 years of Mental Graphics was amazing. I think I met so many good people and did good work. But probably around 3.5 years or so, I started to get restless and tried to figure out what is it that I should be doing next, right? Which is interesting and kind of uses every bit of my potential and every bit of the skill that I have, right? And that was the idea. And the few ideas that I considered was going ahead and doing a PhD maybe, or going ahead and starting a company and seeing how that pans out, right? And I think I gravitated towards doing a company because it was very interesting, very challenging, and it was very open-ended, right? I mean, if you do a PhD or you do a master's, you have kind of visibility into how your life is going to look like 20 years down the line, right? I mean, you have a rough amount of visibility. But I like the fact that with being an entrepreneur, it was extremely open-ended, and you could basically decide what you're going to be in the next 15, 20 years, right? So I think that is what drew me towards that direction as against other things.
Did you have like role models, like Narayan Murthy or some who
No,
like?
absolutely not.
Okay, okay.
I've even now it's people are so flawed that it's extremely dangerous to have role models. I find it very hard to have role models even now. It's extremely difficult for me.
Okay, so you like uh, quit and started on your own. You had co-founders. Tell me about that journey of actually launching
Yeah,
the company that you launched then.
yeah. So my co-founder was Munish, who was my my batchmate from IIT Kharagpur and also my colleague at Mentor Graphics, right? So we had worked for quite a few years, knew each other very, very well, and we're very good friends, and we are still very good friends. And we ended up, and it was like if I'm starting a company, he would basically, of course, or if he's starting a company, I would of course go ahead and join him, right? And so we kind of got together and said that let's do something, right? And we left our jobs within a week of each other. So I left on the 4th of May, he left on the 11th of May, and we started up, right? So I always had a co-founder, right? And my current co-founder Nitesh joined us within 1 month of our having left our previous jobs. He joined us right out of college. He was also at IIT Kharagpur at that time, and then we became this three people team who continued building the first business that we had over the next few years.
What was the business that you thought you will do?
Okay. So we thought, we actually thought a lot and did quite a few things over a period of around 15 months after we left, right? So the first thing that we tried to build was, back in 2007, a local search app like Zomato, where you could quickly look for things around you on mobile phones, but then GPRS connections at that time, as we called it at that time, right, were extremely unreliable and expensive, and very few people had that. So we started with that idea in mind, and then within 3-4 months we realized that there were two problems. One, data was difficult, expensive, and unavailable. Second was that we did not have app stores, and if you wanted to get apps into people's phones, you had to go through these gatekeepers who are basically the Airtels and Vodafones of the world, right? And that is where we thought that we do not want to get into that problem. We want to build stuff and don't want to grapple with the problem of having to go through people, right? So after that we tried one more thing, right? We tried a very interesting product which was like Dropcam that you have right now in the US, right? So it was a camera that you could very easily deploy at your home and monitor using a website. We did that for a few months. We had some initial success, but then over a period of probably 15 months or so, we started with a very small amount of personal cash, started to run out. And at the same time, Facebook apps started to come up, right? It was the 2008 was when Facebook apps were coming up. And we quickly picked up that skill and we started getting some consulting projects.
So, like
within a
US
span of
businesses outsourcing to India.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Businesses, individuals, because, when something like this picks up, anyone who has $2,000 in their pocket in the US thinks that they can build an app and get rich overnight, right? And they probably did not get rich out of that, but we did. And and we started that, and that picked up very fast. And we first picked up Facebook apps, then we picked up iOS apps, because iOS apps came probably an year down the line, right? So we kept picking these things up pretty fast, and we built a team of close to 30 people over the next 1.5 years or so, and we were making decent amount of money.
How were you getting business? Like you had a BD person, or you were yourselves doing sales, or?
It was all inbound, right? I mean, I've been a big proponent of inbound ever since, right? So we did some SEO, we wrote some content, we built a website. I ran a small AdWords campaign where we spent probably a few $1,000s a month, and we managed to get enough. So scaling that got very hard later on, but we could get enough traction out of inbound and references in the beginning.
And so then what happened? Like you scaled it up, you had a 30-member team. What kind of revenue were you doing?
We were doing a few crores annually, which was, we were making, I mean, and after paying everyone off, because it was not very expensive to run that operation, we're making a fair bit of money. And, I got restless again. I thought that I did not sign up to be a founder to build a services company because we were not creative enough and we are not doing interesting stuff. And also scaling that was very, very hard. We could get to where we could get to, but then, maintaining this constant stream of new customers, hiring, running the operations of a services business was, of course, it's interesting to a lot of people, but extremely draining for me. And I wanted to do something creative, and I had a lot of ideas on what to build, right? So then, one point Nitesh and I got together and we said that, we don't want to run this anymore. And we said that we'll go ahead and do a product. So we quit and we started this new company in 2012.
So again, what was the journey of the new company? Like, when you quit, did you have a thought in mind on what you want to do? And
yeah, so we are fairly clear, right? I mean, this was based on a problem that both Nitesh and I had faced, which were around email, right? I mean, we had faced tons of problems around email collaboration and email productivity everywhere we went. And I had some direct experience of, the kind of confusion that not handling email well leads to in a work environment from my experience at Mentor Graphics, right? And we had some ideas.
Like what exactly like you saw as the problem?
Exactly. So my specific problem that I had experienced, which we tried to build on, was around managing knowledge and information, right? So we had this very frequent problem at our work where we would have deep technical conversations on email where you'd ask a problem, someone would offer a solution, then you'd have a thread with 25, 30 emails over a large period of time, right? And then the problem would get solved. And 6 months down the line, someone would ask the same question again, and then you'd be rummaging through people's inboxes trying to find that attachment. Someone might have left, etc., etc. Right? And fundamentally, the insight was that email inboxes are silos, but they contain information that is relevant to a larger context than my own personal context, right? And how do I take that information out of inboxes and make it available for and useful for everyone else, right? So that was the basic premise. And that is where we started, right? So that is where we built the first iteration of our product in 2011.
So what was the first product? What did it look like, in the sense that, yeah.
I'll tell you exactly how it looked like. It was very simple. So, we built it for G Suite, and how it worked was that, you have, let's say you're looking at an email, right? And on the right side, where you have information about that contact, you would have a button that said send to Grexit. We were called Grexit at that point of time. Which is another interesting story. But so if you clicked on send to Grexit, that our product would basically extract all the information from that email thread and would put it into a centralized knowledge base, right? And then you could continue a conversation after that on the email. You could continue it over the next 1 month, and we would keep automatically refreshing and keeping the content on the knowledge base up to date, right? And then you could have access control saying that these people can have access to these conversations and they could go into the knowledge base and access and find information, etc., etc. So very, very useful thing. Very immediately.
It was like I have questions on this. Like it was like a text-based thing, the knowledge base. It would capture all the text or also the attachments and
everything.
Screenshots.
It would pick everything that was a part of the email thread would just pull that and put it there.
Oh, and how did you how did Gmail give this permission? Was it part of like standard, like they were opening it up to anybody? Or
it was a part of the, so there are two parts of the problem, right? One is access to the emails, and that is all available through, IMAP or their OAuth based API. So all of that was available, right? I mean, a lot about that has changed over the years. It has become much easier to do it now, but theoretically it was all possible. And on the front end, we had to show the button, etc., right? So all of that was possible through a browser extension. So you don't need Google's permissions for that. You could build a browser extension even now, which renders. We have so many companies with browser extensions now, right? So you could build a browser extension to do the front end and have API, official Google APIs to do the back end. So it's all possible. There are questions around whether people would be able to or happy to give access to their emails, but that was a different question altogether.
Okay, so that I assume it was probably not so much of privacy consciousness at that time, and people would have.
Actually, it was the other way around. Okay. No, actually, it was the other way around. You hear no more noise about privacy at this point of time, right? But people are much more relaxed about privacy at this point of time. right? And when we started, the primary apprehension that we faced from so many people was, would people be open to giving access to emails, right? And this is a question that we had to constantly counter. I think you hear a lot more noise about it right now, but people are a lot more, lackadaisical about that thing at this point of time.
Now we are used to clicking on accept,
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely.
okay, okay. So, and how was this funded? Like, did you charge from day one, and were you making money from there, or did you get investors, or?
Yeah, so we ended up raising a small round very, very quickly, right? So, we had been entrepreneurs for some time, and we had connections, and the idea was fundamentally good. Nitesh and I were or are very good technical team. Both of us could build stuff quickly. So we could build a POC, show it to people, get some early adopters to give us feedback, and we could convince enough people to raise. We ended up raising around $175,000 or a crore from so Citrix, the technology company, used to run an accelerator at that point of time. They put in some money, and I knew Vijay Shekhar Sharma of Paytm at that time. It was 197. There was no Paytm at that point of time, and he put in some money, and I also had some of my friends put in some money. So it ended up becoming a 1 crore kind of round, and it was enough for us to get started, right? And then we bootstrapped from there for a fairly long period of time.
And how much were you charging for this? It must have been a
So
per
again,
user license.
yeah, there's a huge, there's a large interesting story around that, right? So we started from a very small price of $1, right, per user, and from there, right now we sell at a price of around $30 per seat. So that journey is another interesting journey that we have seen.
Hmm. Tell me about that. Like this is a pretty massive scale up, like
Yeah,
30x.
yeah, it happened over a period of time, but what is more interesting is what I learned about how to price, right? So I think pricing low is a huge, huge problem because there are a lot, it might make it easier for you to sell, or it might look like it has become easier for you to sell. It leads to lots of problems, right? One is, you attract the kind of customers who do not expect much from you, and then you don't deliver much, and then it's a downward spiral from there. It constantly runs to the ground. Whereas if you price it probably a bit higher than you're comfortable with, in the vicinity of other products that do similar things, what happens is that you have to fight harder to sell, but then that makes you better as a salesman. That makes you better as a product, and that gets you more demanding customers onto the platform, which again works as an upward spiral to make your product better, right? So as a general rule, right, I mean, the worst thing that a company can do is price low. Unless that's a core part of the strategy, to undercut someone. But generally, it's a horrible idea to price low because that basically runs everything to the ground.
Hmm. So how are you selling this? Was it again inbound, or did you like?
Yeah, we have always been inbound. Even now, when we have decent bit of revenue, we are 99% inbound. So it was inbound, right? And we leveraged everything. We of course again went ahead and did SEO. We wrote content. We went and listed on the Google Chrome Store and the Google G Suite Marketplace, etc. Right? We started getting a trickle of revenue pretty quickly in a few months, right?
And this would all have been like global, like US companies,
Yeah,
and
it is still global. It is, it has always been global for us. 99% of our revenue has always been global.
and so how did tell me about the evolution then? So how did that
Yeah,
revenue grow? How did the product grow?
yeah. So, we are pretty restless with the product. We are kind of still looking for the right thing to build. And what we learned was that knowledge management is not a problem that most companies in the world bother about, right? People bother about core business function like sales or customer service or marketing, etc. And knowledge management is kind of this ancillary problem that probably very large companies think about. Probably the Infosys and the Wipros of the world, or maybe the McKinseys of the world. But others usually do not think about that. And so we generally the thought process was that we want to build this company with this really popular, fast-moving product, and do not want to get into enterprise sales where we have to sell to very, very large companies. So we thought how we can change this entire approach so that it becomes more fitted to small and medium-sized companies that will just try the product and buy it, and we don't have to go and pitch and try to sell, right?
How
And
many
and
years in was this happening? Like
it
this journey
was
of
2013 or so, right?
okay.
Yeah. And we are still probably what, 3 or 4 people team. making enough money to pay for our salaries. So what we did then was that we thought that let's move into a direction where it makes it extremely easy for people to manage their day-to-day problems, not do knowledge management, right? And what we built from there was that we have labels in Gmail, and we built something called Gmail shared labels. We are the first company to build it. Now there are probably 5-7 companies that have it. And what that does is that you have a label in your email that says new job application, and you drop that label on an email, and that email gets shared with your team, and they also see the label new job application. Right now, if I want someone in my team to take care of that email, I could add another label called task Nitesh, and then Nitesh gets notified and he can start working on the task. Right. So it was a very simple label-based method of managing your workflow around customer service. Anywhere, email is a fairly important part of the piece.
Any kind of stakeholder interaction could be managed with that.
Absolutely. Where you have a team of people handling stakeholders, vendors, partners. The key thing is that you should have an inflow of email from somewhere else, and you should have a team of people who are managing it, right? And if that fits the use case, it was a good solution, right?
Which is a pretty global thing.
Very
like,
large,
I mean,
very
any
large.
company with more than 30-40 headcount will have a need for something like this.
So that was the idea. We built it, and it took off well. We started making.
By when did you launch it? Like
Yeah, we
13
launched
only,
in 2013. Yeah, we did not take too long to build it. We built it fairly quickly. So we launched it, and we're still 5 people team, right? And we launched it, and then it took off, right? And then we had a few hundred customers. We started making decent bit of money, and we started growing the team slowly. So but then 90% of the effort of the team was going into making this set of customers happy, building more features for them, etc. So we continued to do it, but we started to see a trend. So all of this was bootstrapped. We are continuing bootstrap through this period of time. And
similar pricing, like $1-2, couple of dollars.
We moved to $6-7 by this time.
Okay.
We moved to slightly higher, $5 to $7 at this point of time, right? And
so like a 30-member company would pay you like $30 into $7 per month.
So yeah,
okay.
And but what we noticed was that a lot of what people were doing with this was managing shared email addresses. And by that, I would mean that the emails would be coming into an email address like support@yourcompany.com or jobs@yourcompany.com, right? And then the emails would fan out, and you'd want to manage the emails, right? And if you wanted to do that with the label-based system, it was first of all a huge amount of effort to set it up, right? And it was a very open-ended system where you could set it up in any ways. You could make mistakes, right? And since it was so open-ended, we could not build reporting, we could not build automations. Everything was difficult, right? So 2015, we had this idea that let's turn it into another product where it's customized to handle this problem, right? And then we can probably, since we are solving an important critical problem in a nice way, we can probably move to a higher pricing and also build a lot of stuff around it, which delivers more value. You can probably automate a lot better. You can have much better, deeper reporting, etc. And then we started to build it, and we had the idea to build this in 2015, early 2015. But then, since we had existing, hundreds of customers paying us a fair bit of money and a very small team of 6-7 people at that time, it took us some time to actually go ahead and release what we built next, which actually came in the end of 2016 or early 2017.
What you wanted to build next was a tool to manage shared email account, like a support ID or a jobs, careers ID, or like those kind. Okay.
Which is what we have right now. If you go to Hiver, right? So that is what we wanted to build, and a fairly technically complex project to build it reliably on top of email, right? And
what did you build exactly? Like, if you can just describe that. Like, so, like, say I have a careers at like mycompanydomain.com. So how did your product help?
Okay, so this is the same product that you'll see now if you go ahead and try it out, but let me just quickly describe it to you, right? So, let's say you have a team of 10 people who manage your careers at your company.com account, right? You go ahead and plug Hiver with careers at, your company.com, mynati.com, maybe, right? And now what happens is that everyone from your team, who manages careers, starts to see a section called careers in their Gmail on the left pane, where they have, inbox, etc., right? Under that, they see careers, right? So, and if you click on careers, you see some buckets called unassigned, assigned to someone, etc., right? Now, what happens is that as soon as an email comes in, it is visible in the career section to all 10 people immediately, right? Then you could go ahead and quickly open the email. Anyone from your team goes in, opens the email, right? If they can take care of it, they could send a reply from their own address. So you could send an email from Aditya to the person who sent the email. Everyone else gets a copy of that email in their inbox within the next 10 seconds, right?
And what about the sender? Will he get the ID from Aditya or will he get it from careers?
So you can control that. You can make it Aditya. And that is why people love our product, because, in most helpdesk products, it makes it impersonal by forcing you to reply from careers, right? So it carries on absolutely as a personal communication, right? And everyone else gets a copy. Now, suppose you don't want to take care of the email, right? You could assign it to
suppose
someone.
Aditya is not there next day and someone else needs to further reply, then that is also possible.
Absolutely. So everyone gets a copy of the email. You go to all email section, all email section for the shared inbox, and you can see every email that is going on, right? So second thing that you could do is that, suppose you don't want to take care of it, you can want to assign it to someone, right? So on the right pane, you see the list of all users in your account, and you go ahead and assign it to someone. In which case, they are notified that there is, you have been assigned an email. They could quickly jump to the email and reply to the email, right? And everyone stays in sync, right? And then we go beyond and do lots of interesting things. So suppose you start to reply to the email, and someone from your team also starts to reply to the email. They see that you are replying to the email, so that don't say send. So this is kind of the core. And then there is a lot more. You can automate stuff saying that if an email comes in at this period of time, it should automatically be assigned to someone. Or if an email comes from this customer, if it is not responded to or resolved in the next 3 hours, someone should be notified, right? So that's the automations piece. And there is a reporting piece where you could go in and analyze how many emails you have been getting, how you have been doing in responding to those, which people in your team need help. You could go back and look at data historically, etc. Right? So that's the reporting. So very comprehensive product to help you manage all of this very, very well.
Right? Do you also use AI in it? Like, where say I don't have a very set, strong, defined rule, but a vaguely worded rule that if it is an escalation by a customer, then it should come to me directly. Something like that, like,
We are on it, actually. So we recently just built a machine learning team, and you'll probably see something come out by the end of the year.
Okay. So 16 end you built this. What was your pricing around that time then?
So again, 16 end did not have all of this, right? So automation piece was not there. The reporting piece was not there, right? So 2017 beginning, we launched this, and this launched at a price of $8 to $10 per seat. Okay. And then we went from there. Right?
And so you have to pay for that additional seat of the common email ID also, or only for the seat of the... Okay.
No.
Okay.
So in all the plans that we have, you can have unlimited number of that common email address. We don't charge for that, because we know that if you add more common addresses, you'll basically end up adding more people, right? So which will mean that you'll pay us for those users. So yeah.
And this could also be used for like sales management, like if you want to build a pipeline of leads and put them at different stages and kind of see your pipeline, like which clients are, or okay.
Theoretically possible, but we don't get into that, because customer service or customer interaction management and CRM happen to be very different problems workflow wise, right? So you could hack it with this, but we don't recommend that, and the product is not going in that direction. If you want to handle that, we'll handle that with a different product that is focused on that problem.
Yeah, that would also need a lot of outbound functionality.
Need outbound, and the way you manage your workflow in a CRM is very different, very, very different compared to how you manage it here. Right? So it's a different problem altogether.
And so how is the pricing evolved now, like from that 2016 $8-10 to today?
So we have our primary plan is at $24 per seat right now, which is still 50-60% off, and we sell it fairly often also at a higher price of $37. So 24 and 37 is where we sell most of, but the entry point is $12 at this point of time. You can enter at 12, but then $12 plan is only available to 5 people teams. If you are more than 5 people, you'll have to move to $24. You don't have an option of not, and 24 is annual, right? So if you pay monthly, it is 29.
What is the difference between $24 and $37 plan?
There is a huge amount of difference, right? So 24 has the reporting module, which is very limited. It's just the conversation reporting, right? It does not give you user level, lots of other kinds of reporting, right? And the $37 plan has, the full reporting suite. It has scheduled exports, etc. It also has more advanced automations. So it has time-based automations that, if it is not resolved in this time, you have to report to these people. You can run customer satisfaction reviews in the $37 plan, right? You can do round-robin assignments that, automatically keep assigning emails to this set of people, right? So $37 plan is, it has been built to have the highest amount of value. And we are getting much more comfortable selling that plan as our primary plan now.
So
hopefully,
why did you raise the VC round? Like, did you need funds, or was it for like investing in more growth, or what was the reason?
So basically 2018, sometime, Nitesh and I had the feeling that we have hit product market fit with a large market. So you can hit a product market fit with a small market very easily. But 2018, with the new product, which you see now, right? I mean, the kind of feedback that we're getting, the kind of customers that we're getting, the way the numbers were moving, we saw that we have hit a good product market fit. And if we want to realize the opportunity that we have in front of us, right, in terms of the kind of product that we build and the number of customers that we want to have, it's going to cost capital. Right? It cannot be done free of cost. So just the product is going to require a huge amount of effort, and the marketing is going to be expensive, etc. Right? So we very consciously thought that we should go ahead and raise, and then we had been in the ecosystem for quite some time. So it happened pretty spontaneously that people reached out to us at the same time, and then we ended up.
Okay. So I guess the current trend of remote working makes tools like this very critical. I mean, when you're not sitting next to each other to assign work, then something like this becomes very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has always been important, and from the perspective of managing customer service, right? Even if you are sitting in the same office, right? I mean, it's extremely difficult to manage customer service if you don't have a tool that helps you do that better, right? So again, I think there might be some kind of undercurrent because of the current remote work scenario, but I think it is something that has always been fairly important.
Okay. So what is what is the maximum base of users? Like, how many organizations use Gmail? And what huge, percentage of them are you currently at?
Oh, we are at a very small percentage of that. We are at around, so I'll tell you. So the number of businesses using Gmail is 5 to 6 million, based on last data that they released, I think in 2018 or 19. I would say 5 to 6 million is a fair estimate, right? And number of people in that 5-6 million bucket is 80-90 million. So roughly probably 10 seats per user is what G Suite's average is. Of course, there are some very, very large companies also, right? So but 5 to 6 million is what apparently is the current number of businesses using G Suite. Okay, and we have 1,700, 1,800 customers, right? So we are a speck of dust.
Right.
It's a huge market, very large market.
So do you foresee delinking from Gmail, and or like right now this itself is a large enough market for you to not think of that?
It's a large enough market to build a company with a few $100 million of revenue. So I don't see us delinking at this point of time, because it's better to invest our energies in going deeper into this ecosystem, building more stuff for the people who are already buying, rather than getting into a completely different problem by trying to solve for Outlook, etc., etc. So I think next 18 months, we are going to completely focus on G Suite. We are not doing
Okay. So tell me your own customer service playbook for Hiver. I saw a lot of rave reviews about Hiver's customer service, and I want to understand how you make that so successful.
So it's a part of how our product works, and we have used our own product, and I don't think we can survive without using Hiver the way we do if we have to do customer service like we do, right? And the core component of this is that everyone talks to customers, other than marketing, which is kind of gets involved only when there is a marketing activity. The entire L1 support team, which is the front-facing customer support team, the entire product team, the entire engineering team, and the entire design team, everyone talks to customers firsthand, and that is possible only through
okay. So even someone who's like a full stack developer would get assigned some customer service mails to respond to.
Yeah, it's a very formulated process, right? So of course the L1 team, which is the front facing team, will try to resolve every email, and they'll end up resolving 60% of issues or questions, etc. But the rest 40% that get escalated, it's not like the L1 support person keeps it with them. It's not like Akshay keeps it with them and tells someone on Slack that you solve this problem and I'll communicate to the customer. The entire communication is handed over to the engineer who is solving it, right? And so what that leads to is that there is a lot of customer empathy within the company. Everyone understands that a customer's problem is my problem, and there is a lot of customer understanding also in terms of what is important to a customer and what is not important to a customer. So I think that is key, right? I mean, any company needs to take customers' interaction beyond your customer support team and make more people stakeholder in that. And when that happens, it's also very demanding, because now I'm expecting a full stack engineer, from anywhere in India to talk to someone in the US and talk in the right language, the right diction, etc. But if you can pull that off, that can be very, very rewarding for everyone.
Okay. How did you build this team? You have a remote team, so which means that you need a very high on ownership kind of worker. How did you go about building this?
I think it happened over time. I think one great part is that the early people that we had were very good, and the leaders that we have had are very, very good, right? And that has kind of extended Nitesh and my philosophy on the kind of people to hire. So of course there are lots of factors, right? I mean, there is a lot of trust in the company. There is a lot of openness. We make sure that everyone has to answer every question that they're asked, right? I mean, if me or a leader gets asked a certain question, we cannot say that we don't want to answer this question because I mean, who are you to ask this question? And I think once you have a huge amount of openness and trust, a lot of things get sorted out. So there's no, I don't think there's a magic ingredient. It's just the way it was built over the years.
Okay. So you have like a very laissez-faire kind of a leadership style, or like do you get involved a lot in decision making, or like?
Until both me and Nitesh, we let people run things usually the way they run, right? I think it's more important to have confidence in people, and it's fine if they make mistakes. There's no mistakes, right? There are only disagreements, because you never know who is making a mistake, right? So you never know beforehand, right? So I do not see anything as a potential mistake. I see things primarily as disagreements, right? And you have to sometimes let it pan out and figure out how to end. So that is, that is how the approach is, right? I mean, both Nitesh and I get deeply involved in lots of questions, lots of decision making, lots of, technical discussions. But what we make sure is that, people have the freedom to decide as they want to decide. And it's fine if they do not want to decide in the way that, me and Nitesh want it to be decided, right? As long as they have a solid argument for what they want to do, it's fine.
Okay. So what's your advice to founders building global SaaS products in terms of sales? Like, both lead generation, inbound, outbound, whatever has worked for you, what's like the playbook on what works, what doesn't work, where to spend money, where not to spend money?
So I think the most important thing is to be clear on, what you're trying to do and make that fit with your product and your market, right? I mean, if you are building a product for SMBs, which should move very fast and it should be self-assisted, etc., then you have to work on inbound. You have to really scale that up, right? And outbound just might make sense as a long-term primary strategy. Whereas if you're doing large deal values, selling to IT departments, etc., it might make more sense to go outbound, attend conferences, etc. Right? So that.
How do you scale up inbound? So let's say somebody building a product for SMBs. How do you scale that up, like the inbound process?
I mean, there are lots of details to it, but primarily it's two things, right? It's content, and it's a lot of money poured into marketing, right? It does not make sense to have romantic ideas that I'll just do a lot of content and I'll become $100 million company. It's not possible. Never done, right? So you'll have to combine content, which is, blogs, webinars, thought leadership, brand building, with money poured into, search engine marketing, brand building, etc. Right? It's a combination of those two things. There's no other way to do it.
And what do you spend money on Like one is of course like Google AdWords would be one place, but where else do you spend money on?
So it's primarily Google AdWords for most companies. You'll see that other media takes up a much smaller part, but it's Google AdWords. It's it's marketplaces like Capterra, G2. It's of course retargeting on Facebook, etc. It's LinkedIn. All of that take up a small part of the pie, but then Google AdWords is a large part of the pie. But again, we also do events, conferences. We used to do, and we'll get back to doing Google Cloud conferences, G Suite conferences around customer service, etc. Right. So all of that have to be combined into the mix for it to work.
Okay. And tell me about the name, the evolution of the name. Like,
Yeah.
what was the reason behind calling it Grexit initially?
Yeah. So so Grex in Latin means flock or herd, right? And we being who we were, we knew this, right? Not too many people do. Because I knew this because long back there used to be a chat server called grex.org where before Yahoo Chat people would go to chat, and so I knew Grex means flock. And when we started, I thought it's extremely cool to use that word for something that is basically a collaborative community product, right? And so we called it Grexit when we started.
And how did you think of Hiver? Like again, like community is the
Yeah.
origin.
So I was thinking about names around community, right? So we liked the word Hive, and then we started thinking around that. So we thought that something around Hive makes sense. So I picked up Hive, yeah. At that time, we did not know that Hiver means winter entrance. It actually means winter entrance. So the domain hiver.com is an expensive, extremely expensive domain.
Okay. So, what are you currently excited about?
Currently, on the market presence front, right? I mean, the fact that we are a sub 2,000 customer company in a market that potentially has 5 billion plus companies, right? It is extremely exciting, right? How do I get to so many people? It is completely theoretically possible, statistically possible, right? And how do you solve this? Getting to so many customers quickly. You can of course take an infinite amount of time to get to them, but how do I get to them in 5 to 6 years? That's extremely interesting, right? And how do I, take care of marketing, sales, fundraising to make sure that happens, right? And the second is the promise of the product, right? What else can we do with the product that makes it more interesting? And the fact that we are taking on really well-funded companies like Zendesk and Freshdesk, some of them are actually bidding on our keywords, on our brand name, which is extremely exciting for us. And I think we can make a huge difference and impact if we keep building the product further, because we think it's the most unique, most interesting, most intuitive approach to solving the problem that we solve.
Are you looking at setting up offices globally, or you want to remain in India and do like a pure online onboarding and stuff like that?
So, we'll hire people wherever we need to hire people, right? So, we have a couple of people in the US. Our head of sales is in Canada. Our head of, channel sales is in the US, right? But
why did you hire them over there? Like, what was
our head of sales was actually based here, but he moved to Canada, right? And then he continued to work for us, right? And our head of channel sales is in LA, and he's probably the most experienced person that you can find in the market on G Suite business development, right? So we hired him because it was absolutely impossible to find someone like him in any part of the world for that matter, right? As for regular sales and onboarding, we intend to run it out of India for the time being. We might build small teams tactically in the US, etc., to handle very large customers if we need to. But I think people are coming more and more to terms with being remote. So we'll see.
What is channel sales for you?
Channel sales is going through G Suite resellers, people who sell G Suite.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So that's more of an offline relationship building.
That's more of an offline relationship building kind of thing, where when they sell G Suite, they also pitch us or help us get through the door.
Okay. So I've asked you this earlier in another way, but have you crossed the $100 million milestone? And you can feel free to not answer if you don't want
$100 million is a very large. We are far away from that, but hopefully we'll get there sometime. $100 million in SaaS terms means you are a $2 billion company based on current valuation multiples, right? I mean, you have so many companies getting 15 to 20x valuation, right? Valuation multiples, right? So
what do you
be
think
happy.
will be the, like, by which year?
So, if we keep doing well, so we'll have to raise tons of money to get to 100 million. My guess is that we'll have to raise 150 million or so to get to 100 million. But if we play it right, if we keep working on the product, if we have a great team, we can probably get there in 5 years. It's totally doable. It's up to us, contingent on us to do it.
Because the market is large enough for you to do it.
Very large. The product works. The product is very highly reviewed, as you have seen. People love it. So totally doable.
And are you looking at parallel products, like we were talking of sales? Are those on the pipeline, or you want to for now?
Around a year down the line.
This was the Spotlight, presented by The Podium. To listen to more such interesting conversations, log on to thepodium.in.